Welcome to another episode of No Expectations. It's me, Andrew, all by myself today. Jen wasn't feeling up to it, so I gave her the day off. Hopefully she'll be back to feeling it and on her feet in no time. Speedy recovery. Took the morning, as I usually do, to go for a long meditative hike. We've talked about it a couple times on other episodes about how I like to hike. It's more of a speed journey. And then went to a place that I go to quite frequently as part of a training routine for myself. And I went to this path this morning, and I found myself confronted by a bunch of downed trees, large maple trees that had succumbed to the wind and the rain that we've been having here in Atlanta lately, and just a large stack of these trees had fallen across the single track path that I usually venture on. And I got there and I was like, oh geez, I'm not going to be able to go where I want to go this morning. And I kind of sat there for a minute and contemplated turning around and walking back and heading back home. And then I said to myself, no, I think I can get through this. I think I can find my way to, climb over these trees or weave underneath them and push some of the larger branches aside and make my way through. And I did. Climbed up on the trees and made my way onto the other side of the trail. And then as I continued on my journey, as I usually would, I started to think about a social post that we had put up just maybe about a week ago about the idea that the obstacle is the path. And, it goes along the same lines of the episode that I recorded a few weeks ago about kleshas and our roadblocks on our spiritual journey. And as I continued on the trail this morning, thinking about what would have happened if I had turned around at that pile of trees and gone home, what would have been different. And thinking about my own roadblocks, my own obstacles that I've been confronted with lately in my own life, whether from a career standpoint, emotionally, or in personal relationships, and wondering if I was seeing those obstacles as a way to grow and learn and find some self-discovery, or was I coming up to the pile of trees and turning around and walking away from an emotional standpoint, and so I spent the rest of the morning thinking about that, wondering about my own attachments and ignorances and aversions and ego and envy, all those things that I talked about in the episode about kleshas, all of those things that really get in the way of our spiritual journey. And understanding that sometimes the path is going to be blocked, and we're going to think that there's not a way around this path or around this obstacle, and that the only way is to turn around. Because what's in front of us may seem painful or unknown. And I think, for example, as I stepped over that pile of trees this morning, I'm thinking, wow, I wonder if there's a bunch of snakes in there. Not that snakes bother me, but that was one of those things that crossed my mind. And thinking, what are we doing here? Embracing this challenge to try to push through this obstacle, to push past this discomfort, and see what I can find inside of myself, and explore that, and realizing that I can't arrive with an expectation. Obviously, that's the name of our show here, and it's easy to say that, to have no expectations, but it is put into practice when we reach an obstacle, because I wanted to get to that end of the trail, or I wanted to do that 5 miles in under an hour, And then I realized there was a roadblock in front of me, and how am I going to handle that? And my expectations of being able to complete that journey in that time that I'd set were no longer reasonable. So I learned a lot about myself in that process. And when I turned around, the trail is a very simple in and out on the same line. So I had to come back to that same place with a pile of trees and cross over. And I learned a lot just in that short time, just maybe that an hour or so that I was out there, about myself and thinking about all of these things in my life, these obstacles, these roadblocks that sometimes I put in front of myself, and that I need to open myself up to them and let them teach me the lesson that's in front of me. So next time you're confronted with an obstacle or a painful decision or a roadblock, think about that as less of a hindrance and maybe a possible experience that you can learn from and grow from. And always come back to those kleshas, those roadblocks, and think about those. Again, their ignorance, attachment, our aversion, our ego, and our envy. And see how those are playing with your journey, and see how you can start to manage those a little bit better. So I'm going to take a break right now, and I'm going to jump back in a minute. You're listening to the podcast No Expectations, where we discuss all things spiritual. My name's Andrew, a lifelong Zen Bodhisattva, recovering yogi, yoga instructor, and author. And I'm here with my friend and student, Jen.
I'm a busy mom, a cyclist. I love to spend time in nature and on my mountain bike, and a yogi. I've been asking myself bigger questions about being on a spiritual path, and I've been asking Andrew a lot of bigger questions about this journey. And we invite you to join us on it. Maybe we'll make you laugh, maybe we won't. No expectations.
So we're back. I wanted to talk today about the 4 kinds of horses. I put a social post up, I think last week, about the 4 kinds of horses in a Buddhist perspective. And what had got me to think about that tale again was a new song I heard from Peter Gabriel, which I hadn't heard from Peter Gabriel in a long time. A fantastic musician, singer, artist that's been around for decades. I hadn't heard anything from him in a while, and his new song popped up on Spotify for me, and I was like, well, let me give this a listen. And the title of the song was 4 Kinds of Horses. And he's using a Buddhist tale, a story about 4 different kinds of horses as an analogy for 4 types of minds. Now, I don't really want to get into the meaning of the song lyrics. That's something that I kind of hold sacred, and everyone finds different meaning in lyrics. And so I invite you to listen to that song and find your interpretation of what he means with his lyrics. But I do realize that he has taken inspiration from this tale of 4 kinds of horses to write this song. And I wanted to discuss that today. In a meditative or spiritual practice, the analogy of 4 kinds of horses is our minds, our states of minds, and how we can identify those states of minds in ourselves, and then find tools that we can use to settle those states and become more concentrated, more mindful, more focused, either in our spiritual discipline and our personal lives. And I wanted to discuss those. So the first kind of horse is wild and untamed. I think anyone who remembers their, preteen, teen years may identify with this type of horse. It's the one that's, restless and uncontrollable and easily agitated, maybe a bit moody, doesn't want to be controlled, resists, being reined in. kind of like a wild stallion. I, you know, certainly identify with the first kind of horse. As a young man, I did not want to be controlled. I wanted to, do what I wanted to do, and I wanted to have my own thoughts and not be bogged down in other people's thinking. And so I certainly identify with that. And as I started on my spiritual path, I wrestled with that kind of duality in myself. Like, hey, I want to be this kind of mindful person, but I'm also like seriously pushing against all conventions. So it was a difficult thing for me to balance. That first type of horse is, we need to identify that. And then it is that we need to realize the importance of calming ourselves and, finding some inner peace and cultivating some compassion for ourselves and to work on our mindfulness in that moment and not feel like we've got to push against everything. The second type of horse is stubborn and obstinate. Again, this also resonates with me too. As a young practitioner of spirituality, I was fortunate to be exposed to a lot of really great Zen and Buddhist texts early in my life. And I just devoured that information and was like, loved that stuff and really resonated with me. And by the time I decided I was going to formally work with a teacher or a master, I kind of felt like I knew everything. I felt like, no one's going to teach me something I haven't already learned. That's also a byproduct of youth, and also byproduct kind of being that first horse too, of, like, no one's going to tell me how to do this because I already know. So that created some challenges for me because I was deeply attached to my own opinions and beliefs. And if I'm honest, unwilling to kind of explore new perspectives. And so that was difficult for teachers and masters to work with me because of my own stubbornness. And on more than one occasion, I probably had a teacher or a guru ask me to leave the program because they couldn't reach me. And so that took, those opportunities when the teacher came to me and says, hey, maybe this isn't working out. I had to really kind of dig down deep inside of myself and go, all right, I need to cultivate some openness, some willingness to embrace things that are different, and see things from maybe somebody else's perspective and not be so stubborn because I don't know everything, and open myself up to that. So that was a big learning process for me. The third kind of horse is one that's easily distracted and lacks focus. And I personally that doesn't resonate with me so much from my spiritual and my spiritual practices, but I can see how it can really impact a lot of people that I teach. A lot of the youth athletes that come to me, and we're working to cultivate mindfulness and build a meditation practice and all of those things. They come to me and they're like, oh, I can't control my thoughts. My brain's thinking about this or that. And I think that's a larger, more systemic problem that Jen and I have discussed on probably more than one occasion on other episodes. It's that we're just bombarded with information all the time, and we feel like we need to be constantly stimulated and distracted, and with whatever it is, social media or news of the day or doom scrolling on Twitter or whatever that is, and that constant chemical buildup that we create for ourselves, the dopamine rush that we give ourselves with constantly looking at our phones for gratification in form of texts or likes or whatever. Those things start to cause us the inability to focus, and I see that a lot in the younger generation where they can't sit still. So it is that opportunity to start to learn the value of mindfulness and concentration, and work on the art of staying present and focused in our daily lives. A mind that's concentrated is most likely going to be a more happy, or I don't really like the word happy, but maybe more content mind. So a mind that's focused, it's concentrated on something, it's working on something, is probably going to be a little bit more content with what's going on around them than, hey, what's the next big thing? Can I get another hit of dopamine if I upload this picture to social, or look for some sort of gratification outside of myself? So that's the third type of horse. The fourth type of horse is calm, disciplined, and attentive. Now, I will say that horse takes a while to develop. It arrives only by going through all three, or maybe just one or two of the other horses to get to this type of horse. It takes time. And that type of horse symbolizes a mind that's steady and balanced, free from distraction. It's like a well-trained steed, if you will. And it represents the ideal state of mind we strive for in our mindfulness practice, looking for peace, wisdom, and compassion. This type of horse is rarely one that just is born and just arrives as it is. To become this type of horse takes a lot of work. And we've talked about that many times on this episode, or on these episodes. It's like it takes lots of work to arrive at these places. It takes lots of failing. It takes lots of falling down. It takes lots of awareness to come to this type of disciplined, attentive, calm state. And it never really ends. It's not like you just arrive to this type of horse and you're there. You continually work with it. You continually maybe go forwards and backwards or sideways on this journey, slipping into maybe wild and untamed, and maybe lacking focus, or being, obstinate. And, I know that I've personally struggled with all phases of this, not just in my youth. As I become older, maybe a bit more jaded, I struggle with these things. And coming back to that fourth type of horse is gratifying, but it's also constant maintenance. I'm not going to lie to you. It requires a lot of work. So it's the idea of reflecting on what type of horse you are, and find some, meaning parallels in your own life. Are we easily agitated by external circumstances? Are we stubbornly holding on to fixed ideas? Are we constantly distracted and unable to focus? Or are we cultivating calm, disciplined, and attentive mind? Those are all good questions to ask yourself. And how can you work forward? And I will say a little side note. There is a different version of the 4 types of horse tale, which I don't subscribe to. Some people will say that Buddha himself actually quoted this 4 kinds of horse, and he uses the idea that there's a whip involved, and he describes the 4 kinds of horses as the first The first horse gallops merely at the sight of a whip. The second horse gallops when the whip touches its hair. And the third horse gallops when the whip touches its skin. And the fourth horse only begins to gallop when the whip touches its bones. I don't know that I subscribe to that. I don't know that I like that analogy. I think it's we need to identify what type of horse we are. And then we can go down the roads of best way to train ourselves. There may be some extreme ways to train ourselves to be more disciplined and attentive, but I don't think the whip is the one. And obviously the story is probably not just about, beating the horse, but sometimes we do need to find extreme ways to bring ourselves under control. I also just wanted to say that there is another variation of that. The Zen Buddhists also have a different take on it. It's kind of a little bit different in the fact that they talk about it as the 10 bulls. And there's a post about that on our website, noexpectations.me, where it discusses that there's 10 woodcuts, and in these art motifs where a man is searching for a bull, and the bull in this scenario is his mind, and going through that process of trying to find that bull, find that calm state, and at some point the man has to use a whip to bring the bull under control. Again, doesn't mean you have to self-flagellate to find your peace of mind and your mindfulness, but sometimes, again, you have to find extreme measures to bring yourself under control if you find yourself in a reckless and unstable situation. All of that aside, we strive to be the fourth type of horse here. And let's cultivate mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion, nurturing the qualities that bring peace and harmony to our lives and the world around us. Enjoy the journey with that. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to No Expectations, the podcast. We invite you to come join us and carry on the conversation at noexpectations.me, our new website, where we will be posting blog posts. We will link all of our episodes there, and you can follow us on our social media sites through the website.